The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The show is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee, and if you like to attend our meetings, they're the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to find out more about our organization, you can go to nashuagop.org to see our website and learn about the events that we have.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and welcome to The People's View. Today we have Senator Gary Daniels, and he's head of the chair of the Finance Department in the Senate. Gary, thank you for coming on People's View.
Thank you for inviting me.
You've been very busy. The Finance committees on both the House and the Senate have been very busy the last several weeks. I know it's a difficult thing, and the only good thing about it is we had a good year, or we anticipated another good year. So we have a little bit more funds than I think we anticipated.
Yeah, that is true. We have been seeing the revenue come in higher than expected, which has given us a little bit of latitude on things and a little bit of room to breathe and maybe take care of some of the things that we weren't able to before. But yeah, both the House and Senate Finance have been busy in the last 5 months. So
I imagine. What do you think are the biggest issues on the? There's a lot of controversy that's coming along with it. We have the House who didn't approve of their budget, although you're using the numbers there as a guide to what the House was looking for. But you had groups that said we were spending too much and other groups that said, well, we're not spending enough. So how did the Senate work that out? Do you think you're spending enough or not too much?
well, indeed the process was completely different than I've seen in my 21 years there, where the House this year failed to come to a position on the budget. We took possession of the budget on April 10th and made a decision to start with the governor's budget. As you know, the House starts with the governor's recommendation, and then they add their own flavor to it and make adjustments as they see fit. Since we wanted to include the governor in the process, the House in the process, we started with the governor's numbers, but we took all the good work that the House Finance had done in what was House Bill 2, and we considered all those things line by line. You know, the Legislative Budget Assistant Office, I can't say enough about them. They do yeoman's work there. They're there nights, weekends. They're the ones who make sure that we're set with all the resources we need for the next day. So they had drafted everything out so that we knew what the governor's position on something was, what the House position on something was, and then we could go from there and fill in whether we agreed with one or the other, or maybe we had our own flavor. So, so from April 10th, you know, right through probably about the third week in May, we went through all that budget line by line, considering everything, and eventually we adopted a large amount of what the House had done. So we just took that over as an amendment to our own bill. As you know, House Bill 144 became House Bill 1, and House Bill 517, which we worked on, was House Bill 2 to the House. So we voted those out last week, and it's now time to start the committees of conference. Part of that, because the House had no position on it, we do have, I think it's called an incorporation of authorization clause or something like that, in that basically extends an invitation to the House to participate in the committee of conference. Because normally those committees of conference, you have somebody representing the position of the House getting together with someone who represents the position of the Senate. So where the House didn't have a position, we made provisions for them to participate in the process, because we understand that, this budget is not just the Senate's budget, but, it belongs to the House and the people they represent. It belongs to the governor and the people of New Hampshire. So we wanted to be all inclusive of input into that budget. So I took the time over the last 7 weeks to meet with all sides, from people who opposed the budget in the House to people who supported it, to people on both parties in leadership and otherwise. I wanted to get their understanding of what was important to them, so that we could work with those ideas in building the budget.
Well, what were the most difficult things you found to try to mesh into this complete budget, I guess?
Well, I think there were things that philosophically
Yeah.
we may not agree on. There were actually a number of things, particularly in the social service and health area, that we could agree on that needed funding. Where we might have disagreed is how much funding should go into that. And understand, as we walk through this process, we may come across a particular program that's funded, say, an extra $500,000 over what the last biennium funded it. People may have wanted to fund it more, but maybe we hadn't even got to talking about things like opioid crisis, mental health, substance abuse, things like that. So I tried to be conservative as we went through. For myself, I wanted to see the programs advance to take care of what we needed, but also to take care of our communities, to address the things that we are constitutionally supposed to take care of, things like education and safety and things like that. So it really is just a lot of moving parts that we're putting together the puzzle one piece at a time.
Health and Human Services is a big part of the budget. It's 40-some%.
Right.
And this one year, this year, they had to come back 3 times for additional money. Is it because everything's growing so fast, or is there some new things that just didn't anticipate, or what is it that caused those overages? Because they're, what, $30-40 million, I think.
Well, yeah, I think originally they were up around 60 million over.
Oh, yeah.
They were able to make up some of that. We end up passing a bill for 33.2 million, taking that out of the 2017 surplus that you were talking about previously, to pay off that overage. And from my understanding, it had something to do with the changes in Medicaid during the process. I'm not sure that I fully understand everything. There's my first year on Senate, there's been a lot to absorb.
Are they a little bit more sure of the numbers now, or they think that they might run into the same problem as Medicaid keeps growing? Because that was one of the issues that was then when we were trying to decide whether to expand the Medicaid option.
Yeah, we actually have taken a lot of action in different parts of it, like in the mental health area. We've added 60 new beds. I mean, we had people in beds in hospital emergency rooms that needed other, whether it's residential bedding or institutional bedding. So we've added the beds there. We've done a lot to try to address the substance abuse issue, particularly with the Sununu Center. That was being underutilized. So we're looking at taking some of the money that's available and making a wing for substance abuse treatment for young students or younger people for that, in hopes that maybe we can address the problem earlier, so it doesn't get to the more extensive and expensive last stages. So there are things that we're trying to fix in there in hopes that will bring the cost down. I think it would be incumbent on the legislature to maybe follow these a little more closely, particularly those who are on the fiscal committee, to see where departments are during the year and try to catch these things early, not wait until the fourth quarter of a year and then find out you're going to be 60 million over. Try to manage it throughout the whole year.
Well, that's managed. I mean, there's so much software that's out there to manage some of these things. I know we're adding more money for software and computers and stuff. Is that going to help keep track of this money and allow people to see changes that are abnormal?
I'm hoping so. You know, one thing I've realized in looking through the budget is a lot of the, most of the federal money that comes in, particularly to health and human services, there's some sort of a requirement in there. They keep data. So while I would really like to see that money go to the frontline workers, many who haven't had raises for a number of
Yeah.
years, and you know we're at a point where one of the things we had to address is the fact that we're losing healthcare workers just because it's difficult to compete with the private sector on that, and we know that these people are dedicated to serving the population, but we also need to be able to give them the money that they need in order to live.
I know that home health care is one of the issues that I personally was involved in with my wife, but they were supposed to get some raise. Is that included in this budget?
We are working on that. There seemed
Okay.
to be a little bit of a snag in the bills that we passed coming up into the budget. So we are actively working on correcting that to make sure that, or at least to try to see that we can find some money that might go out to that
No,
population.
there was supposedly at least I think it was a $2 an hour raise because they hadn't had anything in 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of them in the same situation.
And that's one of the, I guess, cheapest ways to address people who need some kind of health care. They can stay at home, and somebody comes a couple hours a day or whatever. It's much better than being in a hospital or recovery area or whatever.
That is the least expensive way to handle the situation. And frankly, 80 to 90% of the people would just as soon stay home than go out to an assisted living or a
It's better
nursing
for
home.
them as
Yeah.
well.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope that gets included in that final bill.
We're working on it. We've got 3 or 4 days worth of the negotiations to go through.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. The well, that is the biggest part of the budget, but were there other areas, education or safety?
Well,
That,
education, I think we did a lot for the charter schools. Charter schools were another one of those populations that they're workers, they're doing things differently, but they have good outcomes coming out of the charter schools. What we were looking to do is to try to get a little more money there. As you probably know, on the traditional public schools, those budgets are voted on locally
Right.
and seem to go up sometimes by millions of dollars per year. Well, not so much with the charter schools. So one of the things that we did is put in $250 per person additional for 2018 and $375 per person from the current funding level for 19. In addition to that, we have, I think it's $7.3 million going out to the community colleges to help out there.
they've always done a real good job, I think.
Yes, I
every
mean, they're
college.
very good in adjusting to the needs, and I think one of the things that's attractive about them, number one, you can get a good education at a cost that's somewhat affordable. Secondly, that if you had a need for trades, which in talking to people at the public schools, it seems though a lot of times the students are guided toward a 4-year education, where maybe it's not the best thing for everybody.
Right.
Sometimes, maybe pointing them toward a trade would be better. And the community colleges have done a great job in being able to alter their curriculum, their classes, to accommodate a lot of these trades programs.
And they're tied up to the 4-year schools, so you can go smoothly into a 4-year if you decide that's what you want. And there's a lot of people graduating from high school that have no idea what they want to do with themselves.
Right. And two-year schools are a great place to get rid of your basic curriculum. By that time, you may have an idea what you'd like to do, and you can focus your next 2 years on your core stuff.
And sometimes they get into some kind of intern program, which actually gets to test out what the environment's like in some of these jobs.
Exactly.
I know one company that I worked with in Massachusetts did that. So that worked with the 2-year school to show what a lab technician would do, for example. And then you go out and get a 4-year degree, and all of a sudden you're managing a lab.
There you go. I'll tell you one other exciting thing that we're doing with the education area is we're partnering together with people like Dean Kamen to bring in FIRST Robotics, I think it's otherwise known as LEGO,
Yeah.
at the elementary level. We have put away $375,000 per year of the biennium for that to go out into all the elementary schools in hopes of getting people interested in what we call STEM. It's the science, technology, engineering, and math. And, is hopefully grow upon that program. But I really give Commissioner Frank Edelblu a lot of credit in working with people like Dean Kamen in getting this program out there, because New Hampshire has a shortage of workers. We hear this time after time. The companies are really just begging for the right people. To start a generation going through, getting them interested in this high technology stuff, I think can only bode well for New Hampshire, because in the end, we may see an educated workforce that may stay in New Hampshire instead of having them go outside, which is another one of our problems.
That's right.
We give them a good education, but now how do we hold them here in state? And a lot of times they might go down in the Boston area. We'd like to keep all that education and all that knowledge right here in New Hampshire. So, again, there is another effort in there to try to get the problem squared away. But I'll tell you, Carl, one of the other things that was really kind of disturbing is that in talking to the head of the community colleges, he mentioned that 2/3 of the students coming in there need to take remedial courses.
That's a number I've been trying to get, because I know 3 years ago we did that with Nashua Community College, and we found out that the high school kids, there were over 1,000 of them that were in there from our high schools that were even taking 1, 2, or even 3 remedial courses to get through their first year.
Yeah.
So that's still a big problem.
It still is a big problem, and I would really encourage the people at the local level to realize that they're paying. I mean, my town, we're up around $15,000 per child, per student. In Amherst, I believe it's around $21,000 per student. And when you're paying that kind of money, and you're having kids graduate that aren't ready for college, I mean, I'd kind of like to get all the heads of the colleges together with the education commissioner, have the colleges convey what they expect the high schools to graduate the students as. And let's start putting some concentration down at the local level, because, frankly, we're paying a lot of money at the local level, and maybe we're not getting as much as if we're hoping for or we expect, if so many students are going on to college and not be ready for it.
And that's certainly a number that tells you something. You have to look a little bit deeper into it, find out what actually it's telling you, but it's saying, hey, guys, wake up. You're not educating our students right, and you're graduating them. So you're giving them a false sense of security. Anyway, the one thing I wanted to talk about in charter schools is I understand there's an element where the charter schools are private in a way because they have to go rent out facilities. They don't have government facilities to be in. So they're paying a rent, and that rent was not deductible or counted against their expenses or something. It's just that you're paying them for the number of students, not some of their what is called overhead expense.
That may be true, but my understanding is that you can, under law, have a charter school within a traditional public school.
Yeah.
So
but what if you don't?
Well,
I mean, our charter school, one of them anyway, we have, I think, 3 here in the town now. The one that's more in the scientific area is doing a real good job. They're getting write-ups in the paper and everything. they just rented a facility that some company moved out of. So it's it's a nice facility, but it's certainly not a school. And I don't know whether the school, the total population in Nashua has gone down, whether they're thinking of possibly giving a school to the charter people.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that the charter schools do their own fundraising.
Yeah.
And I suspect that that may be in part for the things that you're talking about, for their rent and such like that. But we're giving so much per student, and
There's no limitation on how they use it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay, because I was led to believe that they couldn't, whatever their bookkeeping things are, they couldn't get rid of. Oh, I know what it was. Tax-free. You know, the regular schools are tax-free as far as real estate tax. Why can't the facility that they rent be tax-free?
Well, I guess it probably.
I don't know if that's a state regulation or a local
regulation.
regulation.
I don't think there's any state regulation.
Yeah, that prevents
pertaining
that.
to it.
Yeah.
So I would say probably right now those who are in charge of the charter schools are probably looking for places, and whether that's in a traditional public school or whether that's in a private location where they have to rent and make their own deal with that. And
Some of the church schools, I think, are tax-free from that.
and I mean, it might raise also a question: if somebody is renting out to a school, do they get any kind of a tax deduction?
As far as I know, no. That was one of the things that I've talked to somebody that is involved with those schools.
Okay.
It's not that. But anyway, that's something else we can look into, because I think they're getting a good return for their money.
Yes, they are.
Definitely. And in safety or any of the other divisions of administration that we're looking at, Department of Transportation?
Well, Department of Safety, one of the things that we've been working toward, and what we see, if you look at the budget, you'll see a big shift of highway funds versus general funds. A lot of the safety budget had been funded by highway funds. Of course, these are the funds that we pay in our gas tax and our tolls. But that fund had continued to go down too, so as not to have to put in another gas tax on things. We took away those highway funds and replaced it with general funds, so it kind of propped the highway funds back up. But I think in a larger sense too, it's something I've always advocated for, that rather than having a department just funded out of highway funds because they're directly or indirectly connected with a highway, I think it forces the department to come before the Finance in House and Senate to justify their budget, and I think that's a good thing in any budget process.
I agree with you too on that, because they had a way of their percentage of that cut kept growing every year until we slapped it down again. But it's to keep Department of Transportation separate. We have a lot of things that we have to do. You added some money to take care of roads and bridges this year too, a little extra, I guess, so we can maybe catch up.
We had $38.6 million that we took out of the 2017 surplus, sent that back to the cities and towns with the restriction on there that it had to be used. I think it was $30 million for roads and $6.8 million for bridges. So we felt that was a direct benefit to those communities. It actually doubled the amount that would be going back, but we felt it was much more beneficial in doing it that way than to send back just a blank check to, I won't say blank check, just send back a check to go into the general fund. Because we wanted to make sure that the roads and the bridges, we know that that's an issue with just about every town in New Hampshire, so we wanted to make sure that those things were addressed.
Do you think that you're going to need to do that at the next budget too? Because there's still a big backlog.
There is, but I also wear a selectman hat in Milford, and I would tell my board, don't plan on it. I think the state has been good in giving us a certain amount to take care of that. The danger in giving extra back is that
won't be there.
sometimes you build it into the budget, then you expect it there for the next year. And when it's not there, then you have a problem at the local level. So I try to look at that as bonus money and say, okay, we've got an X amount. Here's a bridge that really needs to be taken care of. It's a one-time thing. So you spend it on one-time, spend one-time money
things,
on
yeah.
one-time projects, yeah.
Well, that brings it to another question, too. We have people that are saying we're spending too much. We have people who are say we're not spending enough. If we keep it to a minimum and we have another good year, we're going to get excess funding. I mean, we're going to have, like we had a surplus this year that was a lot more than we thought it would be.
Right.
How do we get some of that back to the taxpayer?
Well, I think one of the things that we have tried concentrating on is jacking up the rainy day fund. Before the current budget, that rainy day fund was at a paltry $9 million.
Right.
Now, 2 years ago, we implemented business tax cuts on the business profits tax and the business enterprise tax. We were able to take, and there was also an amnesty a bill that went through as well. We were able to take that fund from $9 million to up to $100 million now. What that does, it gives us a better bond rating. So when we have to bond projects like through the capital budget, we now can get a better rate than we would if it just had $9 million. So that saves money.
Right.
We also were able to take those business profit, those taxes, when we actually came in we expected a shortfall, I think, out of the last budget. We came in with over $100 million more. We took that $38 million, we gave that back to the cities and towns. I know that cities and towns are hurting. I know that we've got numerous places at the state level that are all claimed to be hurting as well. We all need to do our part to bring this together. And I've had people who have come to me and they want the state to do something to give money back to lower their property taxes. And in our March election, we had $40 million on the school side and $11 million on the town side. And we have over 11,000 voters in Milford, and 1,865 came out to vote on over $50 million. And I mean, that's the point in time where people have a say, you know. We happen to be running under the official ballot referendum. So we have our deliberative session and then our voting session. But, you only get maybe 100 to 200 people show up at the deliberative session, and it's there they can come. If they don't like the budget, that's where they can change it.
Sure.
It doesn't do any good going to the voting session on that. And in fact, our school, the default budget was higher than the operating budget.
Yeah.
So if you turn down the operating budget, you get something higher. It was backwards. But I can't stress enough that people need to get involved. If you're concerned about your property taxes, get to those meetings. I think you have a different setup here in Nashua. You have your board of aldermen and council, and you've got to get to them and have them do the voting and lower your property taxes that way. I mean, I think we're trying to do what we can at the state level to handle all of the.
But a part of the real estate tax is the state portion that helps the education fund. And wouldn't that be a way of giving some money back, paying the state's share? I mean, I
guess you could, but the question comes, okay, where do you take it from?
Well, I mean, if you have excess money, like you're limited in what you can put in the rainy day fund, aren't you?
$153 million.
Okay, so there's still another 50 million or so that you can put in there. And maybe that's what, if we keep on generating things, because we're getting we're cutting business taxes again, and hopefully we're going to generate more businesses here.
That is our hope. We're seeing business growth right now at about 12.1%.
Right.
And, our expectation is with the proposed cuts that we have put in for business profits tax, business enterprise tax, and the Section 179 deduction, which benefits small businesses. So it raises the cap on their capital purchases now to the same level as the feds, giving a deductible of $500,000. We feel that all those things together are going to help make New Hampshire more attractive to business. It'll help businesses that are here decide to stay here and grow, and in turn, generate more of that revenue. And we had about $20.9 million left after we had kind of spread everything out. And so in talking about what to do with that $20.9 million, we thought maybe the best bang for the buck was to put it into these business reductions to try to help them up. Because obviously, we don't want businesses going out of state. Up until a couple of years ago, we had the highest corporate tax in the nation. Our plan now is to by 2021 to be down below Massachusetts.
Good. Yeah.
And so I think that would be a great thing with the way we have it planned out. I think it's sending a strong message to business that, we're looking into the future. We want businesses to come here, to stay here, to grow here, and that we're willing to help you succeed. Of course, a lot goes into that too, because we have to get that pool of workers that I was talking to you about, and
Have them stay here.
be able to put all the pieces of the puzzle together to make it possible for everyone, for people to have a good paying job, for businesses to succeed.
Do you think the money that we're giving to the University of New Hampshire is helping generate some, getting the people to stay here?
Hard to say. I mean, we have.
I'm not sure what they do with it exactly.
We give $81 million
Yeah.
per year to the university system. That'll be the same this next biennium. I'm told that in spite of them having some of the highest tuition in the country, they actually have some of the lowest student default rates on their loans, which simply means that the students are getting enough of an education that they're able to pick up a job. The question is, where is that job?
Right.
It may not be in New Hampshire. Some of them obviously will be, but it's very likely that a lot of them are in Massachusetts or somewhere else. So again, we'd like to harness all that knowledge and keep them in state.
Do we have any control over how they use that money? Or is it just
They have,
something
the university system has a board of trustees on which the Speaker of the House and the Senate President sit. So there is some control over that. I really couldn't say how much.
The reason I asked that, they're supposed to have a business incubator there. And I was just wondering how effective that was. I know I dealt with one that was at the University of Massachusetts Lowell. And when it got started, they didn't know what they were doing. And it took them maybe 10 years before they figured out how to be a good incubator so that they generated businesses that stayed in the area. And,
well, it seems though the incubators kind of came in around the .com area. And I know the mill in Manchester had a lot of incubator space in there too. In fact, going back to the early 2000s, the Nashua area, southern New Hampshire, actually had the second highest per capita of software engineers in the country, next to the Denver area. So, I think it was that law that when you start out on a business and your income is your profit, not having an income tax in the state really helps. And so, but I think you're right then that incubators have come a long way. We see some setup, but as far as the university system, I really don't know how they might compare to some private.
I was just wondering whether you could actually dictate how some of the funding went to the different parts of the
I would say
university.
we as a legislature probably could not. And even if we could, I think I'd probably leave it more to the Board of Trustees. They're closer to what's going on there. Certainly, I think we at the legislature should take notice on how the university uses the funding that we give them and make sure that it's being put to good use and not wasted on something, and then have them come back and ask for more money.
Okay, well, I know we used to give them money too for capital improvements, which we haven't lately, but they found another way of, I think, getting $30 million for renovation of laboratories and stuff. I don't know if that came into their presentation when they went to you.
I know that starting out, they were asking for significantly more than that.
Yeah.
And that was lowered down to the 30 million. And I think the last time I talked to them, they were looking for 10. So yeah, they're I think being creative and finding ways to raise.
Well, they got the
money.
right person to be the treasurer there.
Yeah, there you go.
She knows where everything goes and that. Well, now we're going to committee of conference. Now got your extra work hours for the next 7 days or something. You have to have a report.
Well, we have to be done our business by Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah, we close our business Thursday. So.
And anybody who wants to see what you're going to propose that we vote on, which is the following Thursday, can go to the state website and pick out the documents, I guess, if
Right.
they wanted to look at the budget.
Right. If you went to nh.gov and under there, the link on the left-hand side that says legislative budget assistant office, and go in there. I think it's a 2018-19 link in there. There are all the documents that we are using. But just in that realm, let me just say that I know there's been a lot of numbers floating around from different pieces. I've had numerous talks with the people in that office, and they have provided me what's called a surplus statement, which shows last year's budget, total other appropriations. These are things that we vote on outside of the budget that have monetary impact on it. And then there are things called lapses in there, which are kind of like safety buffers for departments. So
That's a point of argument, too.
it is a point of argument, and actually I'm working on that point of argument to
Good.
try to take care of that. But in order to really come out with a good figure, you have to take that starting budget, add in, when we had almost $70 million in addition to the budget that we spent, minus the lapses, and it gives you a figure for 2017. When you compare that figure for 2017 against what's being proposed for 18, we're only up 1.4% in the general funds, and then from 18 to 19, only up 1.1%. Both of those which are less than the inflation factor, which was actually something I was really trying to shoot for, to see if we could come in under inflation.
So that's as far as you're concerned, that was your monitoring point. That's what you look at, and that's what you're going to see in the future too.
Well, it certainly is one metric. I mean, you know, like the idea of looking at the CPI plus population growth. Now, population growth in New Hampshire has grown about 0.3% since the last budget. So you factor all those things in, and yeah, I think you're coming out somewhere around maybe 3%. So being able to keep that down, and in fact, the inflation factor on the 12-month for April was 1.9. So, you know, we're still underneath even that.
Okay.
So, you know.
So you'll keep that monitoring, keep watching it, and I mean, numbers have been tossed around with people throwing 10%, 5%, 3%, 1%. I saw what you generated last about that showed how you got to this 1.5 or under 2% per year. I think that's good, and I think that has to be coming out so that people see that as we go along. And we also look at the departments and see that they're monitoring their cash flow properly. We can't have some of this stuff that went on this last year. I know that the governor is looking at some talented people to put in some of these departments. And I hope that we are able to control that a little bit.
Well, as I mentioned, that's actually something I've been working on. I started yesterday and continued some work on it today with the hope of bringing that in to make the departments more accountable for their budgets, but not not go through this process where, I'm going to give you $120 and tell you at the end of the year I want $20 back.
Right, right. Yeah.
I'd rather just say, okay, here's your budget.
That's it.
Go
Operate by it.
go and work it and stay within it. I mean, that's
And
that's
you have the safety rainy day fund.
we
there
do
if
have
you
we
need
do have
that
the
for
rainy
any
day
kind of
fund. If
unplanned expense that comes up.
yeah, if true emergencies come up,
Right,
we can
that's-
always go to fiscal.
Right.
But that's why I think, you mentioned the monitoring. I would be in favor of maybe having quarterly reports going back to the finance groups, even the governor and council who appoint the commissioners to head up the departments, as well as the fiscal committee. And that way we can track how departments are doing with their spending and whether they are truly, have a plan
Yeah.
for going through as
Give
to
them 30
waiting until the
days
end
to
of the
come
year.
up with the numbers and maybe give them some kind of penalty if they don't come up
Well,
with the number.
I think
don't
there's
know.
already a little bit of a penalty within statute that says if a commissioner overspends their budget, they are personally responsible for it.
Oh, yeah, but have we ever applied the penalty?
Well, but see, the thing is, and that's what gets back to the lapses. If you had, let's say, $100 million budget, and your lapse is about 3.3%. So if you had, 103.3 million, they could actually spend that extra 3.3 million and be within their budget.
Right.
Because the lapse is considered part of their budget.
I,
So by closing up that lapse, and my intent, right, would be to take it down to 1.5% as a first step. I think it allows them to start adjusting and managing things. So
there was something in the HB2, what the equivalent of that, which allowed the administration department to move money around, move people around, reorganize. I mean, that's my perspective of it anyway.
well, we've actually had, I mean, the administrative services, I think, have some of that flexibility, and they are moving some of their people around. I think they did away with positions within that, but there are other positions, so they're transferring employees over there. One of the other big places that we're looking at, though, is the Department of Child and Youth and
Yes,
Families.
definitely.
And there's kind of a reorganization going on there, including changing the management there. Their lead attorney now, we are going to put under the Attorney General.
General's office.
So it really separates them from that, which I think is really, really good as far as having that independent counsel to do that. And, we're hoping to bring a little bit of more accountability in there. We've given them more people to take care of the extra caseload. Hillsborough County-wise, Department of Corrections, they're opening the new women's prison this
Yeah.
fall. We've given them 58 people.
Positions, yeah.
Yeah, and one thing that changes from there is over in Goffstown, I guess they can have 4 people to a cell
Yeah.
over there. At the new prison, they can only have 2. So it has become necessary to appoint 2.8 people for every one that you have. So that's an added expense that we're seeing up there. But that's all being done under a court order. So it's one of those things where we really don't have a lot of latitude.
Does look like a nice facility. I was up there visiting it.
Well, it should.
Should be for the money we're spending. Well, thank you very much,
You're very
Gary.
welcome.
Senator, I know the job's hard, and good luck in the next week.
Thank you very
I look
much.
forward to your documents, and I hope our people are looking in too for that, and pay more attention to how the budget's being. And you don't see enough in the newspapers. So they got to really, the people that are interested should be looking up on our website, the government website.
I indeed hope they do too. I mean, it is a good budget. It lives within our means. It doesn't raise taxes and fees. It leaves us with $100 million in the rainy day fund. So if we ever hit, a drop in the economy, we've got the money there to absorb that, not, risk going bankrupt because we don't have enough in surplus.
Thanks again, and good luck.
Thank you very much.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.